Chapter 1. The Boast of Hrungnir. In the shadowed realm of Grjótúnagard, where the winds howl like wolves and the mountains tower like sleeping titans, there lived a giant unlike any other. His name was Hrungnir, son of stone and storm, the mightiest among the Grjótúnagard. His body was said to be carved of living rock, his heart a grinding stone that beat with the weight of the earth itself. His skull was thick granite, his fists as heavy as falling boulders, and his voice could shatter cliffs when raised in anger. The other giants feared and revered him, for none could match his strength or endurance. Hrungnir himself took pride in this, and pride, as it often does, grew into arrogance. Around the fire halls of Jotunheim, he drank the strong ale of giants and boasted endlessly of his might. Who among gods or men can stand against me? Hrungnir would thunder, slamming his stone fist upon the table until mugs toppled and the ground shook. No blade of Midgard can cut me. No hammer of Asgard can shatter me. I am stone eternal, unbroken and unyielding. The giants roared their approval, for they loved nothing more than a bold boast. But Hrungnir was not content with admiration in Jotunheim. His gaze turned outward, across the rivers of ice and the storm-lashed seas, to the shining realm of the gods Asgard. In his cups, he grew even bolder. I shall stride into Asgard itself, he declared. I shall claim the mead of the gods, take Freya from my bride, and topple Thor from his throne. Odin himself will bow before me. Such words would have been mere drunken rambling, if not for the fate woven by the Norns. For every boast carries weight in the tapestry of destiny, and Hrungnir's words carried like thunder across the realms. It was said that Odin, the Allfather, sitting upon his high seatlids, heard the giant's boasts carried on the wind. His one eye gleamed with curiosity, for Odin was ever drawn to test the limits of gods and men. He saw in Hrungnir's pride a spark worth kindling, a challenge worth entertaining. One morning, as the sun broke over the icy peaks, Hrungnir strode alone across the jagged plains. The frost crunched beneath his stone feet, and the clouds darkened above his head, as if the sky itself recoiled from his presence. Then he saw it, a shining figure upon a golden steed, descending from the heavens like the dawn. It was Odin, mounted on his 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, whose hooves carried him swifter than any wind. His cloak of blue billowed behind him, and his single eye pierced Hrungnir like a spear. The giant sneered. So, the Allfather dares to come to me. Have you brought your ravens to witness your defeat, Odin? But Odin only smiled, calm and knowing. I have heard your boasts, Hrungnir, he said. You claim to be the strongest of all beings. Shall we put this to the test? Sleipnir is the fastest steed in the 9 realms. Let us resif. You can match me to the gates of Asgard. Then perhaps your words carry truth. At this, Hrungnir's pride flared. His veins pulsed with stone-born fury, and his laughter echoed like avalanches in the mountains. A race, very well, God. I shall follow you to Asgard, and when I arrive, I shall drink the mead of your halls and smash your walls to dust. So it was that Odin spurred Sleipnir forward, and Hrungnir gave chase, his immense strides shaking the earth. Across mountains and valleys they thundered, the horse swift as lightning, the giant relentless as an earthquake. Villages in Midgard trembled as the earth split beneath Hrungnir's feet. The sky itself seemed to falter at the sight of such a pursuit. Though Sleipnir was faster than the wind, Hrungnir's fury carried him forward, and before long the walls of Asgard gleamed on the horizon. Golden towers pierced the clouds, and the rainbow bridge, Bifrost, arched like fire across the sky. At the very gates of the gods, Odin halted, his smile sly and hidden beneath his beard. For, by guile and challenge, he had drawn Hrungnir where few giants dared to tread. The gates opened, and the giants strode into Valhalla itself. The Einherjar, the chosen dead, paused in their feasting, their weapons clattering as they beheld the massive figure. The Aesir stirred uneasily, for though they were mighty, seldom had such a giant walked among them. But Odin welcomed Hrungnir as a guest, for the rules of hospitality bound even the gods. He offered the giant a horn of mead, and Hrungnir drank deep, his pride swelling with each gulp. Soon his voice rose, louder and bolder, until the golden hall quaked with his boasting. "I am the mightiest," he roared. "These walls are but fragile gold, ready to crumble before my fists. I shall carry Freya away, and Sif, I shall kill Thor with my grindstone, and no one, no god, no giant shall stand in my way." The gods frowned, anger stirring in their hearts. Freya's face grew cold as moonlight, and Tyr's hand clenched upon his sword. But it was not until Thor himself returned to Asgard that the hall truly shook. For in that moment, thunder rolled across the sky, and lightning lit the high windows of Valhalla. The feast stilled, the mead grew silent in its cups, as the god of thunder strode into the hall, his hammer Mjolnir at his belt, his eyes burning with storm fire. And thus the stage was set for the boast of Hrungnir would soon be answered in battle. Chapter 2. Odin's Gamble. The golden hall of Valhalla was hushed, its lofty rafters echoing with the fading thunder of Thor's arrival. Hrungnir the giant stood in the center of the feast, his stone frame towering above the gods, his laughter rolling like an avalanche. In one massive hand he held a drinking horn, mead spilling down his chin as he sneered at the company of the Aesir. Odin sat upon his high seat, Hrungnir the spear resting at his side. His single eye, bright with wisdom, yet shadowed by fate, studied the giant closely. Odin had not brought Hrungnir here by chance. The Allfather's purpose was veiled, for he was ever the gambler one who played not only with the lives of men and gods, but with destiny itself. Hrungnir raised his horn and shouted, "Do you hear me, Allfather? Do you see me, Aesir? No walls can keep me out. No gods can strike me down. I walked into your hall unchallenged, and soon I shall walk out with your treasures, your women, and your glory. Where is Thor, your thunderer? Let him come. I will grind him to dust beneath my stone fists." Gods stirred uneasily. Tyr, god of war, placed a hand upon his sword. Heimdall, the ever-watchful, frowned and whispered that no good would come of letting such a beast remain in their halls. But Odin raised his hand, stilling them. "Hrungnir," Odin said calmly, his voice deep as the roots of Yggdrasil, "you have entered our hall as a guest, and by our laws, no harm shall come to you while you drink our mead. Yet you boast greatly, and words such as yours demand to be tested." The giant slammed his stone fist upon the table, rattling the golden plates. "Test me, then. I am Hrungnir, the mighty breaker of mountains, son of stone. No challenge frightens me, no god dares oppose me." Odin's single eye gleamed with cunning light. "Then let it be so. Not by feasting words, but by combat shall your strength be proven. Yet Asgard is sacred, and no duel shall stain these halls. We shall meet you in open ground, where all may witness truth without question." A murmur ran through the gods. Some nodded, eager for Hrungnir's downfall. Others shifted uneasily, wary of Odin's choice. For the Allfather was not one to act on impulse. He had lured the giant here, and now he spoke of battle as though the threads of fate demanded it. Hrungnir threw back his head and laughed, a sound like grinding boulders tumbling down cliffs. Yes, a duel, a glorious duel. But I will not fight here, nor upon the fields of Asgard. If your champion dares face me, let him meet me on Grjótúnagard, the stony plain that borders Grjótúnagard. There, beneath the open sky, stone and storm shall clash, and all shall know who is the mightiest. Odin inclined his head, accepting the terms. So be it. There upon the plain shall this boast be tested. At that, Thor strode forward, his hand upon the handle of Mjolnir, the hammer of thunder. His eyes, fierce with stormlight, fixed upon Hrungnir. You wanted me, giant. You wanted to taste the hammer of the thunder god. Then mark this. I accept your challenge. Upon Grjótúnagard you shall fall, and your stone body shall be shattered to dust beneath Mjolnir's blow. Lightning flared outside the hall, and the air trembled with the force of Thor's words. But Hrungnir only grinned, his jagged teeth glinting. A hammer against stone. Foolish god. Your weapon will break before I do. I will crush you with my grindstone, and when you lie broken, I shall stride across Asgard unopposed. Even now, I feel the earth tremble in fear of me. Freya, seated beside Odin, turned her gaze upon the giant, her face calm but cold as winter's night. Beware your arrogance, Hrungnir, she said softly, for pride is a weapon that cuts deeper than any blade. The gods do not fall as easily as your boasts suggest. Yet Hrungnir paid her no mind. He drained another horn of mead, his laughter booming. Let your thunderer prepare. Let him polish his hammer and call his storms. I shall meet him with stone shield and whetstone, and we shall see whose strength endures. The hall filled with whispers. Some gods feared Thor's wrath might bring ruin. Others eagerly awaited the battle. But Odin remained silent, his mind moving in the deep currents of fate. For he had seen more than the duel. He had glimpsed the path to Ragnarok, the twilight of gods. And though this battle would bring glory, it would also bring wounds that could not be undone. At last, Odin rose from his seat. Enough, the bargain is struck. Hrungnir shall face Thor upon Grjótúnagard. Let the 9 realms bear witness to their combat. Until then, giant, you are our guest. Drink your fill, for soon you shall drink no more. And with that, the feast resumed, though unease lingered like a shadow among the gods. Thor sat brooding, his hand never leaving Mjolnir. Hrungnir reveled, drinking deeper, his boasts louder than ever. But in the quiet corners of the hall, whispers passed between the wise. Some said Odin had played a dangerous game, drawing the giant into Asgard and binding him to a duel. Others murmured that fate itself had moved Odin's hand, and that this battle was but another stone upon the long road to doom. Above them all, the ravens Hugin and Muninn fluttered upon the beams, their black eyes gleaming. They had seen the threads of destiny, and their caws echoed like omens in the dark. Storm and stone, storm and stone. Thus was the wager made, and thus the doom of Hrungnir was sealed. Chapter 3. The Feast in Valhalla. The torches of Valhalla blazed brightly, their golden light dancing across the polished shields that adorned the walls. Warriors of Odin's hall drank from endless horns of mead, their laughter rising like thunder. Yet beneath the revelry lingered a shadow of unease. For at the high table, seated among the gods themselves, sat the stone giant Hrungnir, a guest unlike any other. Hrungnir raised his drinking horn high, his voice booming as he shouted across the hall. Is this all the mead you gods can offer? In Jotunheim, our horns are vast as rivers, and our drink as strong as the roots of the earth. Truly, I thought the Aesir mighty, but your feasts are but child's play compared to the banquets of giants. The Einherjar, the fallen warriors who filled Odin's hall, muttered angrily, their pride wounded. Yet the Allfather, with his calm gaze, bade them hold their peace. The law of hospitality was sacred, even when the guest was a foe. Thor sat nearby, Mjolnir resting beside his chair, his eyes burning like storm fire. More than once he rose half from his seat, ready to strike the insolent giant down. But Odin's hand upon his arm stilled him. Patience, son of Yor, the Allfather murmured, for the stone is hardest just before it breaks. Hrungnir leaned across the table, his stone brow casting a heavy shadow. Tell me, gods, who among you dares to challenge me in strength? Is it Tyr, the one-handed? Shall I break him with my bare fists? Or perhaps Heimdall, the watchman, node to swift, to cunning? But Thor, he turned, his jagged grin spreading. Yes, Thor, they call you Thunderer, Stormbringer. Yet all I see is a boy with a hammer, glaring like a child, denied his toy. The hall fell silent. Even the mead seemed to still within the horns. Thor's fingers tightened upon Mjolnir's handle, the veins upon his arm taut with restrained fury. The air around him hummed faintly, as though lightning yearned to leap forth. Careful, stone giant, Thor growled, his voice low and dangerous. 4 words are easy spoken, but they weigh heavy when matched with deeds. Speak so again, and I will forget the law of guests. But Hrungnir only laughed, the sound like stones grinding upon one another. He slammed his fist upon the table, splintering the wood. Yes, that is the fire I seek. Strike me, Thor, if you dare. Let Asgard tremble with our battle. Freya rose from her place, her eyes cold as moonlit snow. You shame yourself, Hrungnir, to brawl like a drunken beast in Odin's hall. If you would prove your strength, do so on the field, where honor may judge you, not within the house of the gods. The giant sneered, but drank deeply again, his throat gurgling like a boulder in a rushing stream. Fair words, lady of beauty, but what does honor matter when strength rules all? When Thor lies crushed, I shall take Asgard's treasures as my own. Even you, Freya, shall ride with me to Jotunheim as my prize. A furious murmur swept the hall. Sif, golden-haired wife of Thor, clenched her fists in outrage. Tyr's sword half drew from its sheath, and the Einherjar pounded their fists upon the tables in anger. Only Odin remained unmoved, his one eye fixed upon Hrungnir with unreadable calm. Thor sprang to his feet, his chair crashing to the floor. Mjolnir was in his hand, the hammer's head glowing faintly with the gathering of storm. By the 9 realms, I swear, giant, you shall pay dearly for that tongue. At Grjótúnagard, I will meet you, and there your stone body shall shatter beneath my hammer. Lightning cracked outside, shaking the very rafters of Valhalla. The Einherjar roared with approval, their horns raised high, chanting Thor's name. Yet Hrungnir only grinned wider, his eyes glinting with wild joy. Yes, he bellowed, there it shall be. On the stony plain, let storm and stone clash. I will grind your hammer to dust with my whetstone, and Asgard shall bow before the might of Hrungnir. He drained his horn once more, mead spilling across his stony chest, and staggered to his feet. Though drunk, his immense presence filled the hall with dread. With one last thunderous laugh, he pointed at Thor. "Remember this, thunder god, the earth itself shall shake when we meet, and even your storms will break upon me like waves upon the cliff." With that, Hrungnir turned and strode heavily from the hall, his footsteps echoing like falling mountains. The golden gates of Valhalla shut behind him with a resonant boom, leaving only silence in his wake. For a long while, none spoke. Then Heimdall, ever watchful, broke the silence. "Allfather, why did you let him leave unscathed? His insults defiled our hall. His boasts challenged our honor. Why did you not strike him down?" Odin rose slowly, his cloak of raven's feathers rustling like midnight wind. "Because fate has already chosen the field of battle. Hrungnir's doom lies not in Valhalla, but upon the stony plain. There all 9 realms shall bear witness, and the lesson of pride shall be carved into the bones of giants." Thor lifted Hrungnir, its weight steady in his grip. "Then so be it. I will face him, and I will end him. Let him bring his stone shield, his whetstone, his strength. None shall withstand the hammer of Thor." Odin placed a hand upon his son's shoulder. His gaze was grave, his voice low. "Take care, Thunderer. Hrungnir is strong beyond measure, and fate is never so simple as a hammer's blow. Even victory may bear a wound that lingers." Thor met his father's gaze, stormlight burning in his eyes. "Let fate come then. I am Thor, son of Odin, defender of Asgard. If Hrungnir seeks to break us, by storm and by steel, I will not falter." Thus the feast in Valhalla ended not in joy, but in foreboding. For though the mead still flowed, and the laughter rose once more, every god knew that a storm was gathering upon the horizon, one of stone and thunder, pride and destiny. And in the shadows, Odin's ravens spread their wings and whispered once more, "Storm and stone, storm and stone." Chapter 4. The challenge declared. The giant Hrungnir left Valhalla with laughter still echoing in his throat, each booming sound rolling across the skies like an avalanche. He returned to the realm of Jotunheim, his massive strides shaking the earth. As he crossed the shadowed mountains and frozen rivers, whispers spread among the giants. Hrungnir has drunk in Odin's hall. Hrungnir has challenged Thor himself. In the stone fortress of Grjótúnagard, where cliffs pierced the clouds and the ground was littered with broken boulders, Hrungnir summoned his kin. Giants of frost and stone gathered, their eyes burning with curiosity and doubt. "Brothers," Hrungnir roared, standing upon a jagged outcrop, "the gods think themselves mighty, but tonight in Odin's hall I challenged their thunderer, Thor, and before all Asgard he accepted. Soon, on this very plain, I will break his hammer with my whetstone, and Thor will lie shattered at my feet." A cheer rose from the gathering of Jotunkind, but beneath it lurked unease. For though the giants hated the Aesir, none doubted Thor's strength. Many had seen him fell frost beasts and trolls with a single blow of Hrungnir. To stand against him in open combat was to tempt doom. Hrungnir, however, reveled in their doubt. He raised high the whetstone, a slab of sharpened rock cut from the heart of the mountains. It glittered coldly in the pale light, sharp as any sword, heavy as the weight of ages. "With this stone," Hrungnir declared, "I shall meet his hammer, rock against storm, earth against sky. Let us see whose power endures." Meanwhile, in Asgard, the gods gathered in council. Upon the high seat of Hlidskjalf, Odin gazed far into Jotunheim, his single eye, seeing the preparations of Hrungnir. His ravens returned, their wings heavy with tidings. "Father," said Tyr, the one-handed god of war, "the giant readies for battle. Shall we march with Thor to aid him?" But Odin shook his head slowly. "This is Thor's battle alone." The challenge was given, the challenge accepted. To break it would shame us before all 9 realms. Sif, golden-haired wife of Thor, stood near, her eyes filled with worry. "Then send at least a guard with him, Odin. If Thor should fall, Thor will not fall," Odin answered, though his voice was heavy with foreboding. "Yet I fear this fight will leave its mark, for the skein of fate has already woven storm and stone together, and even victory carries its price." Thor himself stood silent, Mjolnir in his grasp, his gaze hard as iron. He cared little for fate's weaving. To him, only honor mattered, honor for himself, for Asgard, for the gods he defended. But beside him, a small voice spoke. Thor's swift-footed, mortal servant stepped forward. "Master, let me go with you. I may not bear a hammer, but my speed and wit may yet aid you." Thor looked down at the youth. He saw no fear in his eyes, only loyalty burning bright. A rare smile flickered across Thor's face. "So be it. You will stand by me when the stones fall and the storm breaks. Perhaps fate has use even for the swift of foot." And so it was declared. Thor, son of Odin, would meet Hrungnir upon the plain of Grjótúnagard. When the day arrived, the skies themselves seemed to shudder. Dark clouds gathered above the stony plain, their shadows crawling like serpents across the jagged rocks. Hrungnir stood waiting, his stone body towering, his whetstone held in one hand and a massive stone shield in the other. He planted his feet wide, like a mountain rooted in the earth. Beside him stood a monstrous figure, hastily fashioned from clay by the giant's mocker Kalfi, a man of mud and stone, taller than even Hrungnir, his eyes glowing faintly with crude magic. Yet, though great in size, his limbs trembled with fear, for the life given him was weak and uncertain. The giants laughed as they watched their champion prepare. "See," they cried, "Hrungnir shall crush Thor, and the gods shall tremble." But far above Heimdall sounded the Jallarhorn, his clear note ringing across all the realms, announcing the coming duel. The rainbow bridge, Bifrost, blazed with light, and across it strode Thor. His red beard flamed like fire, his eyes shone with the fury of storms, and in his hand he bore Mjolnir, the hammer that no force could withstand. By his side ran swift as lightning across the stones. At the sight of him, Hrungnir roared with joy. "At last, the Thunderer comes. Stand firm, stones, for today's storm and earth shall meet in battle." Thor raised Mjolnir, lightning crackling along its surface. "Hrungnir, your boast has carried you far, but it ends here. By the will of Asgard, by the oath of gods, I will break you." Darted forward, circling the giants with clever words. "Hrungnir," he shouted, "you stand foolishly, leaving your heart exposed. Even now, Thor readies to strike from beneath." Confused, Hrungnir lifted his shield to guard his lower body, shifting his stance. In that instant, Thor raised Mjolnir high, the weapon blazing with the air thickened. The sky rumbled. Storm and stone were moments away from their clash. The plain held its breath, even the winds stilled. With a shout that shook the heavens, Thor hurled his hammer toward Hrungnir. At the same moment, the giant flung his whetstone with all his might. Stone met storm in the air, the impact exploding like the breaking of a mountain. Shards of rock and fire rained across the plain. the clash of weapons echoing to the roots of Yggdrasil itself. Thus was the challenge truly declared not by words, but by the meeting of storm and stone. And as the dust rose and the sky thundered, the fate of gods and giants hung in the balance. Chapter 5. The Duel of Stone and Storm. The sky tore open with the roar of thunder. As Mjolnir and Hrungnir's whetstone met in the air, the explosion shook the 9 realms. Sparks blazed like falling stars, shards of stone whistled through the air like deadly arrows, and the plain of Grjótúnagard trembled under the fury of gods and giants. Thor's hammer, glowing with stormfire, shattered the whetstone into 1,000 fragments. Shards rained down, biting into the earth and the flesh of those who stood too near. One splinter struck Thor himself, embedding deep into his skull. Pain flared white-hot, but the god of thunder did not falter. His rage only deepened, and the storm within him roared louder. Hrungnir staggered as the hammer crashed against his stone shield, splitting it in half with a sound like a mountain breaking. Yet still, the giant stood, roaring his defiance. His body of stone glistened with cracks, but his fury was unbroken. "Thor," he bellowed, raising his fist the size of a boulder. "Even shattered stone endures longer than fleeting storm. Feel the strength of Jot." He swung downward, a blow that could have crushed 10 men into dust. Thor met it head-on, Mjolnir flashing upward in a blur of lightning. The two forces collided, thunder and rock, each blow echoing like the collapse of worlds. Meanwhile, the clay giant Mökkurkálfi, trembling with fear, faced Thor's servant. Though towering in size, his limbs quaked, for he was no true giant, only a creation of earth and weak magic. Swift and clever, darted around him, hurling taunts. "Clay man," he shouted, "your heart is mud, your courage water. Stand and fight if you dare." Mökkurkálfi let out a moan of terror, his body quivering like soft earth after rain. With a single strike, S-blade cut into the giant's leg. The clay monster toppled, crashing to the ground with the sound of crumbling cliffs. His fall shook the battlefield, but he did not rise again. The giants, watching, gasped in shame, for their champion's companion was fallen, leaving Hrungnir alone. But Hrungnir fought with the fury of 10. His fists rained down like avalanches, each blow gouging craters in the stone plain. Thor answered with Mjolnir, his strikes like lightning tearing through the sky. Sparks of power lit the battlefield, dazzling and terrible. Once, twice, thrice they clashed. Thor struck Hrungnir's shoulder, and the stone giant reeled. Hrungnir smashed his fist into Thor's side, sending the thunderer staggering. The ground cracked beneath their feet, and the air itself screamed with the force of their blows. At last, with a roar, Thor hurled Mjolnir with all his might. The hammer spun through the storm like a comet, striking Hrungnir square in the forehead. The giant's scream shook the heavens. His skull split with the sound of mountains breaking, and he toppled backward, falling as though an entire cliff had collapsed. The earth quaked beneath his weight, dust and stone erupting skyward as his massive body crashed to the ground. But as Hrungnir fell, his stone leg came down upon Thor, pinning the god beneath it. Thor struggled, straining his mighty strength, but the leg of stone was heavy as the roots of the world itself. For the first time, the Thunderer found himself unable to rise. The gods who watched from afar cried out, but none dared break the duel's law. Rushed forward, his face pale with fear. "Master," he cried, trying with all his mortal strength to lift the giant's leg, but it would not move. Thor lay pinned, his hammer still clutched in his hand, but unable to rise to claim his victory. Though Hrungnir was slain, the thunder god lay trapped beneath his foe's weight. His face pale from the shard of whetstone lodged deep in his skull. The battlefield grew silent. The giants fled in terror at the sight of their fallen champion, while the sky above rumbled low and ominous. It was then that salvation came not from gods, but from innocence. Thor's young son, Magni, only 3 nights old, appeared upon the battlefield. Born of Thor and the giantess, the child already bore the strength of his father. Without hesitation, Magni grasped the stone leg with his small hands and lifted it as though it were no heavier than driftwood. The boulder-like limb rolled aside, freeing Thor. The thunder god looked upon his son with pride, even through his pain. "You are truly mine, Magni," he said, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "For even in your youth, you bear the might to move mountains." The battle was ended. Hrungnir, the mightiest of stone giants, lay broken upon the plain, his head split by Hrungnir, his whetstone shattered into fragments scattered across the world. Yet, though Thor had triumphed, the victory was not without cost. The shard of whetstone remained lodged in his skull, an eternal wound that no god could remove. Odin himself later sought the wisdom of Volvus, the seeresses, to find a cure. Yet they warned him, "The shard shall remain, a mark of storm and stone's meeting, until the end of days. It is woven into fate itself." Thus ended the duel of storm and stone, a battle sung by skalds for ages to come, and a reminder that even gods bear scars from their victories. And though Hrungnir was slain, his challenge echoed in Asgard. If one giant dared rise against Thor, others surely would. Chapter 6: The Aftermath of Victory. The battlefield at Grjótúnagard lay in silence. Dust still hung in the air where Hrungnir's body had fallen, his stone form cracked like a mountain split by lightning. The whetstone fragments glittered faintly across the plain, half buried in earth and stone, dangerous to all who touched them. Thor, though victorious, lay weakened. The shard of whetstone embedded in his skull pulsed with pain, sending waves of fire through his mind. Blood mixed with stormlight trickled down his brow, and even the mighty thunderer gritted his teeth in anguish. The gods who had come to witness now gathered close, their voices hushed. Odin, the Allfather, stood tall, his one eye shining as he gazed upon his son's trial. "You have struck down Hrungnir, mightiest of the stone giants," Odin said gravely. "Yet victory has a price. The shard in your head is not a wound of flesh, alone it is a fragment of fate." Thor tried to rise, but staggered, leaning on Mjolnir for strength. He turned to Magni, the child who had freed him. The boy stood unafraid among gods and giants, his small hands still dusted with stone. Thor placed a hand on his son's shoulder, pride flashing through the storm clouds of his pain. "You have saved me, Magni," he said, his voice heavy yet warm. "For this, I grant you Hrungnir's steed Galfaxi, the golden-maned horse, swift as the wind." The gift caused murmurs among the Aesir. Galfaxi was a prize worthy of gods, and many whispered that such a gift should have gone to Odin, not to Thor's half-giant child. Odin's eye narrowed, but he said nothing, for even the Allfather knew that Thor's gratitude was his own to give. That night, the gods returned to Asgard. Feasts were held in Thor's honor, but his laughter was subdued, his brow shadowed by pain. Each beat of his heart drove the whetstone shard deeper, and no healing salve, nor spell of Frigg, nor even the runes of Odin could ease it. At last, Odin called for the Volvas, the Cirruses, who wove fate's tapestry. They came draped in cloaks of raven feathers, their eyes blind, yet all-seeing. They circled Thor, chanting in voices that echoed like wind over grave mounds. When their song ended, the eldest spoke, "Son of Odin, thunderer of Asgard, bearer of Mjolnir, the shard in your skull is more than stone, it is the memory of Hrungnir's defiance, the mark of storm meeting rock. It shall remain with you until the doom of gods, for such is the weaving of word." Thor frowned, his hand tightening on his hammer. "So I must carry this wound until Ragnarok." The Volva nodded. "Aye, and when that day comes, the shard shall awaken, and the fury of storm and stone shall meet once more in a battle that shall shake Yggdrasil itself." A heavy silence fell. Even Thor, fearless in all battles, felt the weight of prophecy. For the Norns themselves had decreed his doom. Days passed, though the shard remained. Thor did not retreat into weakness. Instead, he returned to his duties, guarding Midgard from trolls, frost giants, and serpents. Yet always the pain lingered, a constant reminder of Hrungnir's strength and of fate's shadow. Meanwhile, the fragments of the shattered whetstone did not lie idle. Across Midgard, mortals who touched them were cursed. Splinters pierced their flesh and could not be removed, festering with pain. Farmers who plowed too near the battlefield found their fields poisoned by the shards, their crops withering as if struck by drought. Warriors who tried to forge weapons from the stone found their blades heavy and brittle, breaking in battle. The people soon came to fear the whetstone fragments as cursed relics of the giant's fall. They avoided the plain of Grjótúnagard, leaving it a barren scar upon the land. One night, Thor sat alone upon the ramparts of Asgard, the stars glittering cold above him. His mind turned not to victory, but to Hrungnir's challenge. The giants grow bolder, he thought. If Hrungnir dared march into Asgard itself, others may follow. Each foe I strike down is greater than the last. How long before their strength surpasses mine? The shard in his skull throbbed, and he clenched his jaw. "Let them come," he growled. "For as long as I breathe, no giant shall pass unbroken." Yet even as he spoke, the winds whispered of greater threats, of Jormungandr stirring in the depths of the sea, of fire giants gathering in Muspelheim, of prophecies yet unfulfilled. Hrungnir's fall was not the end, but only one step toward the storm of Ragnarok. But there was light amidst the shadow. Young Magni grew swiftly, his strength surpassing even that of full-grown men before his first year. The gods looked upon him with wonder, for in his small frame blazed the power of Thor and the resilience of S-blood. Where Thor bore the scar of Hrungnir, Magni carried his father's hope. In him, Thor saw not doom, but the promise of a legacy that even fate could not erase. And so, though the whetstone shard throbbed in his skull, Thor lifted Mjolnir high, lightning flashing across the night sky. His laughter, fierce and defiant, rolled across Asgard. For though fate's web was woven, Thor was not one to bow before it. The saga of storm and stone had ended, but the saga of Thor had only grown greater. Chapter 8: The Prophecy of the Stone. The dust of Alvis's fortress still hung in the air when Thor returned to Asgard. His stride was steady, yet those who looked closely could see the weight upon his brow. The shard of Hrungnir, still lodged within his skull, glowed faintly beneath his skin, like an ember of stone and shadow. The gods gathered in Gladsheim, the great hall of the Aesir, to hear of his victory. Mead was poured, yet the mood was uneasy. Odin, all-seeing, spoke first. You have crushed the wielder of the cursed staff, my son, yet the pain in your head tells us the truth. The curse is not ended. The spirit of Hrungnir lingers. Thor's jaw tightened. Then I will shatter every fragment myself. No stone will remain to mock Asgard. But Odin raised a hand. Strength alone may not suffice. This curse reaches beyond mere battle. We must seek the wisdom of the Volvas, the Sirises who read the threads of fate. The journey to V at Odin's command. Thor journeyed with Frigg and Tyr to the ancient grove where the eldest Volvas dwelled. The forest was silent, heavy with mist, and the air carried the smell of damp earth. Within a hollow tree, they found the three sisters, their faces pale as moonlight, eyes clouded yet burning with knowledge. The eldest Volva spoke first, her voice like wind over stone. You come bearing the shard of Hrungnir Thunderer. The wound is not yours, alone it is the wound of the world. Thor frowned, his hand gripping Mjolnir. Speak plainly. What doom do these stones foretell? The weaving of doom, the Volvas unfurled a great woven tapestry of fate. Upon it shimmered scenes of past and future, woven in threads of gold, silver, and shadow. They pointed to a dark shape coiling across the threads, its form vast and endless. This curse, the second Volva whispered, is tied to the serpent Jormungandr, who waits beneath the sea. The shards of Hrungnir are seeds sown into Midgard. When they are many enough, when blood has watered them, they will awaken as stone giants once more, and the serpent will rise to greet them. The youngest Viviva's voice was softer, yet more chilling. Thus the end of days will hasten. Ragnarok, the twilight of gods, shall be fed by these stones. Thor's defiance, Thor's eyes blazed like stormfire. Then I shall destroy them before they awaken. No stone shall stand, no serpent shall rise while I breathe. But the eldest Valva shook her head. Your strength may shatter boulders, Thor, yet you cannot halt the weaving of fate. The shard within your skull binds you. It is not only your pain, it is the anchor of prophecy. Wherever the stones awaken, you will be drawn. This is your doom. For the first time, silence weighed heavy on Thor's heart. He had faced countless giants, yet the idea of being chained to fate itself gnawed at him. Odin's question. Odin leaned upon Hrungnir, his spear, his single eye gleaming. Tell us, wise ones, is there no path by which the curse may be delayed, if not undone? The Volva spoke in unison, their voices weaving into a single echo. There is one path. The whetstone shard in Thor's head must never be removed. So long as it rests within him, the stones will sleep, their awakening slowed. But if it is drawn forth, their full power will return, and Ragnarok will come swifter than the turning of seasons. Thor touched his brow, feeling the dull throb of the shard beneath the skin. His face hardened. Then I will carry it. Better I suffer than the worlds perish. The omen of blood, the youngest, Volva suddenly gasped, her hands trembling over the tapestry. Yet beware, Thunderer, blood already stirs the shards. In Midgard, kings battle for land, and their slain fall upon fields seeded with Hrungnir's fragments. Each drop of blood awakens them a little more. War itself feeds the stones. Frigg's voice, soft yet heavy with sorrow, broke the silence. So long as men wage war, the curse will grow. It cannot be ended. The gods stood in silence, each pondering the weight of fate. A whisper of hope finally The second Volva leaned forward. There is but a glimmer of hope. Beyond the farthest seas lies a cavern of crystal, older than the giants, older than even Ymir's bones. Within, it burns the heart of stone, a flame that devours stone and leaves it powerless. If Thor bears the shard to that place, it may consume Hrungnir's spirit. Odin's eye narrowed. And what price would such a path demand? The Viviva's lips curled faintly, sorrowfully. The heart devours not only stone, but also what carries it. The Thunderer would not return. Thor smiled grimly, lightning flashing in his gaze. If my death saves Asgard and Midgard, then let it come. But until that day, let the giants quake before me. Return to Asgard. The gods returned from the grove in heavy silence. Thor bore his burden more openly now, no longer hiding the pain of the shard. The Aesir looked upon him with respect deeper than ever, for they knew his torment preserved their safety. Yet the Volva's words haunted Odin most of all. He walked alone beneath Yggdrasil, whispering to the ravens Hugin and Munin, the stones of Hrungnir, the serpent of the sea, the twilight of gods all, are threads of one weaving, and even Thor cannot break it. Thus the prophecy of the stone was spoken, and all the 9 realms trembled at its weight. The curse of Hrungnir had become more than vengeance of a single giant. It was now a shadow over all creation, a herald of the doom to come. Chapter 9. The Wars of Men. In the shadow of Asgard's high walls, the gods still debated the Volva's prophecy. Yet, while they argued, the world of Midgard was already stirring. Men ever ambitious, ever restless, had begun to shed blood upon the fields seeded with Hrungnir's fragments. The gathering storm of men far to the south, 2 kings contended for the same throne. King Hagbard of the Iron Hills, whose banners bore the image of a black wolf, raised his warriors with promises of conquest. Against him rose King Eirik of the Riverlands, a ruler known for his cunning and silver tongue. Their feud was born not only of pride, but of greed, for both lands lay upon the plains where fragments of Hrungnir had fallen. When Thor shattered the giant, each stone seemed a simple boulder to mortal eyes, but the blood of fallen warriors seeped into them like wine into thirsty earth. Their veins began to glow faintly at night, unseen by men, but felt by the spirits of giants long dead. The first awakening one twilight. After a day of brutal battle, the field was littered with corpses. Ravens feasted, wolves prowled, and the soil ran dark with blood. Among the slain, one jagged stone trembled. It pulsed as if a heart beat within it. Then, with a sound like cracking ice, it split, and from within crawled a grotesque shape of half stone, half flesh. The creature rose, stumbling on legs heavy as granite, its eyes glowing faintly blue. It bore no mind of its own, only the fury of Hrungnir's lingering curse. And as it stood, other stones around it quivered, beginning their own slow awakening. The men who survived the battle fled in terror, whispering of stone wraiths that walked the night, but few believed them, for who could imagine that the earth itself birthed such monsters? Odin's ravens bring word. High above Midgard, Hugin and Munin flew on black wings, carrying the sight of men and monsters alike back to Odin. In Gladsheim, Odin sat in silence as the ravens whispered into his ear. His single eye burned with troubled fire. He spoke to Thor, who stood nearby, polishing Mjolnir, though the hammer needed none. The curse has begun. Men war, their blood feeds the stones, and Hrungnir's children stir. You must go, my son, for already they march beneath the banners of mortal kings and witting servants of chaos. Thor rose at once. Then I will scatter them as I did their sire. Let no stone mock me by walking the earth. But Odin's hand gripped his arm. Take heed. Every fragment you crush feeds the shard within your skull. The more you strike, the heavier your burden becomes. Rage will not save you this time. Thor's answer was grim and simple. Then let the burden break me, if it must. But I will not leave Midgard to the mercy of stone. Thor among mortals, Thor descended into Midgard clad, not in the splendor of Asgard, but in the garb of a wandering warrior. Yet, even in disguise, the farmers and peasants felt the air thrum with his presence. They whispered of a great stranger whose eyes shone like stormlight and whose hammer shook the ground. When Thor arrived at the battlefield of Hagbard and Eirik, the carrion birds still circled above. He saw with his own eyes the stone wraiths, their bodies jagged, their movements clumsy but strong as mountains. They tore through camps of sleeping men, leaving only broken shields and crushed bones. Thor strode into the chaos, Mjolnir glowing in his hand. With one swing, he shattered a wraith to dust. With another, he crushed two more. The mortals who saw him fell to their knees, crying out that a god had descended to save them. The king's folly, yet instead of uniting, the kings grew jealous. Hagbard claimed Thor had come to fight for his cause, while Eirik declared the Thunderer was his champion. Their pride blinded them. And even as Thor battled the Stoneborn, their armies clashed again at dawn, staining the ground with fresh blood. The more they fought, the more wraiths stirred. From 10 they became 20, then 50, until the battlefield seethed with them. Thor roared in fury, lightning splitting the sky. But even his might could not keep pace with the endless rising of the cursed stones. A plea for wisdom. When night fell, Thor sat apart from the men, Mjolnir heavy across his knees. The shard in his skull throbbed with savage heat, and each beat seemed to echo the pounding of stone hearts across the land. Then came Sif, golden-haired, who had descended from Asgard to join him. She placed her hand upon his shoulder, her voice soft as rain. You cannot strike down fate with a hammer, beloved. Each blow awakens more. You must find another path, or Midgard will drown in stone and blood alike. Thor clenched his fists. Am I to watch while men perish? I am no coward, but I will not stand idle while giants rise again. Sif gazed at him with sorrow. Then seek not to end the curse with strength alone. Perhaps there lies wisdom even among mortals who suffer most from this doom. They may teach us what our pride has forgotten. The prophet of the Riverlands the next day. Thor sought out a man whispered of by Menia, seer of Midgard, named Alaric, who wandered the Riverlands with only a staff and a cloak of tattered fur. Some said he was half mad, others that he spoke with the old spirits of the earth. When Thor found him, Alaric did not bow. Instead, he laughed, a sound like crackling fire. So the Thunderer himself comes to beg counsel of a broken man. I know of your shard, godling. I see the stone glowing in your head like a beacon. Thor frowned. Then tell me, mortal, how do I end this curse? The seer's eyes gleamed. End it, you cannot. Delay it, perhaps. Divert it, yes, but end it, ever. The curse is not stone, not blood, not serpent. It is fate itself. And fate is a river that none may dam. Thor growled in frustration. Then what am I to do? Alaric tapped his staff against the earth. You are to be the storm that shapes the river's path. Strike not at every wraith you see. Instead, seek the heart of the stones. Somewhere among these fragments lies the core of Hrungnir, the first shard that fell. Destroy it, and the wraiths will weaken for a time. Thor's eyes narrowed. A new fire stirred within him. At last, a target worthy of his fury. Thus the wars of men fed the curse of Hrungnir, and from their blood rose an army of stone. Yet within the chaos, Thor found a new quest: to seek the core, the very heart of his enemy's lingering spirit. And though fate loomed dark, the Thunderer swore he would hunt it, even if the heavens themselves shook apart. Chapter 10. The Hunt for the Core. The words of the seer Alaric lingered in Thor's mind like thunder rumbling on the horizon. Seek the heart of the stones, destroy it, and the wraiths will weaken for a time. Thor rose before dawn, Mjolnir strapped to his side, his eyes sharp as the wanes. He looked to Sif, who had remained beside him through the night. I go to hunt the core, he said, voice steady, though the weight of fate pressed heavy upon him. And I will follow, she answered without hesitation. No storm rages without the earth to ground it. The first clue, guided by Alaric's visions, Thor and Sif traveled across the battle-torn plains. Wherever they went, they found fragments of Hrungnir stirring with faint blue light. Yet Alaric had spoken of one fragment greater than all others, the true core of Hrungnir, where the giant's hatred and essence remained bound. At last, the seer told them of whispers carried on the wind. The core had been dragged away by Theus, deeper into the earth, into caverns untouched by men. Its resting place was said to lie beneath the mountains of Jotun's teeth, jagged peaks that pierced the clouds like fangs. The journey to Jotun's teeth, Thor and Sif journeyed for 9 days through forests and rivers. Along the way, they fought not only the stone wraiths, but also men who had fallen under the curse warriors, who believed themselves chosen by the fragments and wore shards upon their armor, which hardened their skin and clouded their minds. On the third night, they were ambushed by a host of such warriors, their eyes glowing faintly blue. Thor swung Mjolnir, crushing their enchanted armor as if it were brittle wood. Yet, when the battle ended, he gazed at the corpses with grim silence. These were men, not giants, Sif said softly. The curse spreads beyond stone. Hrungnir's hatred seeps into their hearts. Thor's jaw tightened. Then all the more reason to end it swiftly. The guardian of the pass on the 9th day. They reached the foothills of Jotun's teeth. The mountains loomed black against a storm-lit sky, their cliffs sheer and their valleys echoing with distant growls. At the mouth of a narrow pass stood a monstrous figure, neither man nor giant, but something between, a creature of stone and flesh fused together, taller than any troll, its chest embedded with glowing shards, its voice rumbled like grinding rocks. No further Thunderer, the core is not for you. It is the seed of our rebirth. Thor stepped forward, lightning already crawling along his arm. Then you are the first to fall. The battle shook the mountains. The guardian hurled boulders torn from the cliffs, but Thor shattered them mid-air with Mjolnir. The beast struck with fists like hammers, yet Sif darted like a golden flame, her blade biting between stone plates. At last, Thor leaped high, bringing Mjolnir down upon the creature's chest. With a sound like a mountain collapsing, the shard at its heart shattered, and the guardian fell silent, crumbling into rubble. The cavern of echoes beyond the pass lay a cavern whose walls gleamed with veins of crystal. The air was heavy, as though the mountain itself held its breath. Deep within, Thor heard a faint heartbeat, not his own, but something vast and ancient. They descended into the dark, torches in hand, until they reached a cavern so wide it seemed a world unto itself. In its center lay a massive stone, black as night, pulsing with faint blue light. It was the size of a throne, jagged and cracked, yet alive with Hrungnir's essence. "The core," Sif whispered, her voice trembling with awe. Thor felt the shard in his own skull burn like fire. Each pulse of the core echoed in his head, dragging at his thoughts, filling him with visions. Hrungnir laughing in triumph, Thor broken beneath his heel, Asgard in flames. The temptation as Thor approached, the core's whispers grew louder, words clawing into his mind. "Why fight fate, Thunderer? You are already bound to me. Strike me down, and my shard will devour you whole. Accept me instead. Let us be one. With my strength and your might, even Odin will bow. Together we shall rule gods and men alike." Thor staggered, gripping his head, his vision swimming with lightning and shadow. For an instant, he saw himself crowned in black, wielding not Mjolnir, but a hammer forged of stone and blood. "Thor," Sif cried, grabbing his arm, "this is not you." Cast out its voice. Her touch steadied him. With a roar, Thor drove the whispers back, his will like thunder breaking the sky. He lifted Mjolnir high, its runes blazing. The shattering Thor brought the hammer down upon the core. The cavern erupted with light and sound. A storm trapped beneath the earth. Shards flew in every direction, searing the stone walls with burning blue fire. The ground shook as if Ymir himself stirred in his sleep. When the light faded, the core was no more only dust and fractured rock. Thor fell to one knee, gasping, for the shard in his skull now throbbed more fiercely than ever, as though it raged at being denied its kin. But around them, the echoes of countless wraiths screamed and then fell silent. Across Midgard, their bodies crumbled, leaving only lifeless stones behind. The price of victory. Thor rose slowly, leaning on Mjolnir. Sif touched his face, concern in her eyes. "You have won, but at what cost? The shard within you grows stronger. I fear each victory brings you closer to ruin." Thor's gaze hardened. "If fate demands my ruin, then let it come. I will not turn aside while giants rise again. So long as I stand, Midgard and Asgard will not fall." As they left the cavern, the storm above broke open, lightning splitting the heavens. Yet far in the distance, unseen by them, a shadow stirred in Jotunheim. For the destruction of the core had awakened those who slumbered still, the true kin of Hrungnir, who now whispered Thor's name with hatred. Thus began Thor's hunt for the core, a victory, hard won, yet incomplete. For though the wraiths had fallen silent, the curse endured, and the shard in Thor's skull beat ever louder, a reminder that his greatest battle was yet to come. Chapter 11. The Shadow of Jotunheim. The storm still raged above the mountains of Jotunna's teeth as Thor and Sif descended from the cavern. The air smelled of lightning and dust. The ground trembled with the aftershocks of what Thor had done. The core of Hrungnir was no more, its power shattered into dust. For a moment, Midgard seemed at peace. The wraiths had vanished. The cursed warriors collapsed lifeless where they had stood. Villages once haunted now echoed with silence instead of screams. And yet Thor felt no triumph. The shard within his skull pulsed like a drumbeat of war, angrier now than ever. At night, when he closed his eyes, he heard Hrungnir's laughter, closer, clearer, as though the giant stood just beyond the veil of shadow. Whispers on the wind, on the third night after the core's destruction, as Thor and Sif camped beside a river, Alaric the seer came once more. His face was pale, his hands trembling. "You have shaken the roots of the world, Thunderer," he said. "The core's destruction has not ended. Hrungnir's curse has awakened others." Thor narrowed his eyes. "Speak plainly, seer." Alaric lifted his gaze, fear burning in his eyes. The true kin of Hrungnir stir in Jotunheim. Giants long asleep now open their eyes. They call your name with hatred, Thor. They march not as wraiths, but as flesh and stone, living mountains of rage. At his words, the shard in Thor's skull blazed with heat, filling his vision with images. Vast shapes moving across icy plains. Voices like avalanches, chanting a single word, Thor. The dream of the giants that night, Thor dreamt. He stood upon the endless plains of Jotunheim, the frost biting deep into his flesh. Before him rose a line of giants, each towering higher than the mountains, their eyes burning with the same blue fire as Hrungnir's core. At their head was a figure, cloaked in darkness, taller than all the rest. Its voice rolled like thunder. "You slew Hrungnir. You shattered his heart. Now you shall face his kin. We are the shadow of Jotunheim, and we will see Asgard fall." Thor raised Hrungnir, lightning crackling across the frozen sky. But when he struck, the hammer passed through them like mist. Their laughter echoed around him, endless, unstoppable. He woke, drenched in sweat, the shard throbbing as though it shared their laughter. The council of Asgard Thor returned to Asgard, his heart heavy. Before Odin's high throne he stood, with Sif at his side, and the Allfather gazing down with his single eye. "You have done what none else could," Odin said, voice both proud and grim. "Yet your victory has torn open the veil. The shadow of Jotunheim rises. Even I did not foresee it so soon." Frigg, queen of Asgard, spoke softly. "If these giants march, Midgard will burn first, then Asgard itself." Loki, leaning lazily against a pillar, smirked, though his eyes gleamed sharp. "So, the Thunderer has once again shaken the world. Tell me, brother, do you think you can strike down all of your Jotunheim with your hammer alone? Or will the shard in your head strike you down first?" Thor growled, but Odin raised his hand. "Enough, Thor, son of Odin, you have bound yourself to this fate. You must go to Jotunheim and confront what awakens there, not for vengeance, but for balance. If the shadow rises unchecked, even Ragnarok may come too soon." Thor bowed his head. "Then I will go. Let the giants come. I will meet them with storm and steel." The march of the giants. Even as Thor spoke, the shadow of Jotunheim stirred. Across the frozen wastes of that cursed land, giants rose from their slumber. Some were formed of ice, their bodies glittering like glaciers. Others bore skins of stone and iron, their footsteps shaking the mountains. At their head strode Vafthrûngr, the brother of Hrungnir, his voice deeper than thunder, his strength said to rival even Ymir of old. He bore no weapon, for his fists were as deadly as warhammers, his breath colder than death. "The Thunderer comes," Vafthrûngr growled, his breath turning the air to frost. "Let him come. His blood shall anoint my brother's memory. His skull shall lie beside Hrungnir's, a trophy of Jotunheim." And so the giants marched, each step carrying them closer to the borders of Midgard. Villages fell silent as shadows blotted out the sun. Forests cracked beneath their tread. Even the bravest warriors fled, for how could men stand against mountains that walked? The Oath of Sif. Thor stood upon the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge shimmering beneath his feet. Sif clasped his arm, her golden hair glinting in the starlight. "You do not go alone," she said firmly. "If the giants rise, then so too must Asgard's shield maidens. My blade will stand at your side." Thor looked at her, torn between love and fear. The shadow grows stronger with each heartbeat of this shard. To walk beside me is to court death. Sif lifted her chin. Then let me court it. Better to fall with you in battle than to wait in Asgard while you face the end alone. Thor smiled grimly. So be it. Then let us face Grjótúnagard together. The gathering storm. As Thor and Sif prepared to cross into Grjótúnagard, the skies above Asgard darkened. Lightning crackled across the heavens, and the Bifrost trembled beneath their feet. Far in the distance, upon the frozen horizon, Thor could already see the giants moving a line of shadows stretching across the land, endless, unyielding. At their center loomed Hrungnir, his form so vast it blotted out the stars. The shard within Thor's skull beat faster, as though eager to meet its kin. Each pulse whispered to him, "You are one of us. Your fate is sealed." Thor gripped Mjolnir until his knuckles turned white. "If fate has sealed me," he growled, "then let fate feel the hammer of Thor." With Sif at his side and the storm at his back, he stepped forward into the darkness of Grjótúnagard, where the shadow awaited. Chapter 12. The Last Stand. The Bifrost shone like a rainbow of steel beneath Thor's feet as he and Sif descended into the land of the giants. Cold air bit their skin, the breath of Grjótúnagard itself. Before them stretched an endless plain of ice, and upon it marched the army of the shadow, giants of frost, stone, and fire, each taller than a tower, each bearing hatred for the slayer of Hrungnir. At their center strode Hrungnir, the brother of Hrungnir, whose body was carved from black stone, veined with glowing runes, his fists crackling with primal power. The ground shuddered beneath their steps, a sound like the beating of war drums. The sky darkened as if the very sun feared to witness what was coming. The call of the giants. When Hrungnir beheld Thor, he raised his voice, and all of Grjótúnagard seemed to quake. "Thor Odinson," he thundered, "you shattered the heart of my brother. You defiled the core. Now I shall break you as I break mountains beneath my feet. Your hammer shall be my trophy, your skull my cup of mead." The giants roared their approval, a sound like avalanches crashing from every peak. Thor lifted Mjolnir, lightning dancing across its head, and his voice rose to match. "Hrungnir, if you seek vengeance, come take it from me. But know this, the storm is not yours to command. It belongs to Thor." And with that, he hurled Mjolnir into the sky. Lightning split the heavens, and thunder shook the earth. The battle began, the clash of storm and stone. The giants charged like a living wall. Sif darted among their legs, her blade flashing, severing tendons as thick as oak. Warriors of Asgard, summoned by Odin, poured across the Bifrost behind Hrungnir, shining like living fire, shields locked, spears raised. Thor leaped into their midst, Mjolnir whirling, every strike shattering bone and stone alike. Each swing toppled giants, their bodies crashing to the ice like felled mountains. Lightning seared the battlefield, carving paths of flame through frost. But for every giant that fell, another rose. Their shadows stretched long, their voices echoing with Hrungnir's curse. The shard in Thor's skull throbbed harder, whispering, "You cannot win. You are already ours." The duel of brothers, at last. Hrungnir strode forward, scattering both Asgardian and giant alike with the sweep of his arm. His eyes burned with fury, his voice shook the sky. "Face me, Thunderer. Let the world see which of us is worthy." Thor met him, storm against stone. Mjolnir struck Hrungnir's fist with a sound that shattered mountains. Lightning and raw strength collided, blasting both armies back in shockwaves. They battled across the plain, each blow of Thor's hammer-splitting rock, each strike of Hrungnir's fists shaking the very ground. The sky turned black with storm, the earth cracked open with fire. "Your brother fell to me," Thor roared as they fought, "so shall you." But Hrungnir only laughed, his voice like rolling boulders. "You are not slayer, you are cursed. The shard within you binds you to us. Even if I fall, you will rise as one of Jotunheim's own." Thor's rage blazed, but doubt gnawed at him. Was it true? Was his fate already sealed? The shard's temptation as they clashed, the shard inside Thor's skull pulsed brighter, its whispers rising into screams. "Yield, Thor. Embrace us. Cast down your hammer and join the shadow. You were never of Asgard. You were born for this." Thor staggered, his vision blurring. For a heartbeat, he saw himself as a giant, his skin of stone, his hammer shattered, his hands dripping with the blood of gods. Sif's voice cut through the storm. "Thor, remember who you are. You are the storm, not their shadow." Her words struck deeper than Mjolnir's blows. Thor roared, shaking free of the whispers, gripping his hammer with both hands. The breaking of Hrungnir. Hrungnir lunged, his fist like a mountain falling. Thor leaped high, lightning propelling him upward, and brought Mjolnir down with all the fury of the storm. The hammer struck Hrungnir's skull. The giant reeled, cracks spreading across his stony flesh. Again Thor struck, and again, each blow ringing like thunder. With a final cry, he called down all the lightning of the heavens. It struck Mjolnir, blinding in its brilliance, and the hammer shattered Hrungnir's head in an explosion of stone and fire. The giant fell, his body crashing to the ice with a roar that echoed for miles. The earth trembled, then fell silent. The shadow army faltered. Without their leader, they broke like waves upon the shore, retreating into the dark mountains. The plain was littered with fallen giants, their curses fading into silence. The price of victory, Thor stood, chest heaving, Mjolnir smoking with lightning. Sif ran to his side, her blade crimson with battle, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it," she whispered. But Thor's hand went to his skull. The shard still pulsed, though faintly. He could feel it burning, whispering in the back of his mind. "This is no end," he said grimly. "So long as this shard remains, the shadow will never sleep. The giants will rise again." Sif touched his arm. "Then we will rise again too. You are Thor, and as long as you live, the storm will answer." Thor lifted his gaze to the stormy sky. "Then let them come. I am the hammer, I am the storm, I am Thor Odinson." Lightning split the heavens, answering his oath. And though the shadows still whispered, for now the world was safe.